When you come to the women, obesity reduces the pregnancy rates by almost 50%.
Okay.
But is there a superfood? And then if there is, what is superfood? Okay.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, so no, there is
Thank
nothing
you.
called superfood. I wish there was. It isn't. So a lot of foods get marketed like that, like whole foods, superfoods, magic foods. But end of the day, it is to do with how much calories an individual is taking, how much calories the individual is burning to. And how much of strength workouts, how much of muscle mass an individual is having, that will actually define the person's weight and the body composition.
Even in natural food, all these micronutrients content has come down so much that I will tell you one NIN survey that iron content in tomato in 1989, whatever it was there, now it is only 20%.
What I'm seeing nowadays is that there's more young men, more than women, more young men less than 30 years old approaching me for sexual health problems. Whereas maybe this was not the case when I was in UK. I would see more kind of middle-aged men approaching me for the problems, but here in India, especially even in Hyderabad and all over India, I'm receiving that. And when I go into their history, even they themselves are not aware. When I do the basic blood work, what I'm noticing is that they're either very much, they are quite obese. When I take their general health parameters, and they are either pre-diabetic or over-diabetic, but they were not aware that they were diabetic.
In America, a strange case happened. A lady was given stool transplant. Post-stool transplant, she became fine. She was normal, she was healthy, but she filed a case in court against the doctor. Why? Because she said, I was given gut microbiota from an obese person and I became obese subsequently.
So the way out is to abstain from all this processed food, excess sugar or cut off sugar, get off refined oil, and the most important aspect is to increase protein intake.
So as you can see, we have a diverse group of people who are from endocrinology background and also in fertility and nutrition, obesity. So for the lack of time, we would focus on few things, that is diabetes, obesity and infertility. And now I think because obesity is one of the leading problems that we face in our country and also abroad. So let us start with that. And we would first ask Dr. Modi. So one is that, what is the prevalence of obesity among adults and children, and what are the main differences between the two?
Good afternoon. Actually, obesity even in India, it is increasing very fast. And previously, we were under impression that in rural India it is less, urban India it is very high. But rural India also it is increasing, and roughly around 45 to 50% of urban adults, they are in obese category. And among childhood obesity, it is as high as 25 to 30% in urban India, which used to be around 10% like that. And rural India, it is a little less, but that also is 15 to 20%. So it is obesity, mother of all disease. It is prevalence is increasing very fast in urban and rural India.
Yeah, Mr. Sashi, I think my next question to you is, like, once we know that already there is so much of obesity and overweight, and from your low carb platform and also from your experience, can any nutrition strategies, where are the Indians going wrong, and what do you suggest to people who are already overweight and obesity, or those who want to avoid that? So what are your views on that?
Yeah. So we know that due to the influx of modern processed food, the high energy dense processed food or junk food, they are one of the major cause of obesity. Along with that, the high glycemic foods, and for the matter even intake of refined high omega-6 oils are also hypothesized to be involved in insulin resistance, which ultimately leads to obesity. So the way out is to abstain from all this processed food, excess sugar or cut off sugar, get off refined oil, and the most important aspect is to increase protein intake. I think one of the panel member earlier has stressed on the importance of protein intake. The moment we increase protein intake, the other macros will come down, and this will address, of course, coupled with exercise, adequate exercise. And we have seen how many people exercise in today when the survey was done, and stress management and adequate sleep. I think this will take care of obesity to a big extent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And now divulging little bit to infertility, and we have Dr. Anu here. And so, ma'am, I would like to know from you, how do you define infertility? And does obesity play a role in that? And what are the, why the infertility is increasing? Now we see that many young women and also many young couples, they find it difficult. So, there are three small topics, maybe brief answers to these three of them.
I think most of the couples, they conceive within the first 1 year, that is nearly 85%. By the second year, only 7% of the couples conceive. So that means most conceive within the first year, and later the pregnancy chances become low. So suppose a couple have been trying for 1 year without using any contraception and there is no pregnancy, then the couple is considered to be having infertility. If a woman is below 35 years of age, then you mark time as 1 year. But if the woman is more than 35, then you may need to start investigations and treatment soon after 6 months. You shouldn't be really waiting for 1 year. Whereas if the woman is above 40 years, then we should be starting treatment or the investigations by 4 months itself. So it depends on the woman's age. There could be several causes. There are several causes which are preventable. There are some which are we cannot really prevent or you cannot avoid. So one of the preventable causes is a lifestyle factor. The way we are living our life, the obesity, we can see there is an increase in the drug usage, smoking, alcohol, the lifestyle behavior. So all this can actually have an impact on the pregnancy rates. When you talk about the obesity, obese, even a male person or a female can have an effect on the pregnancy rates. In men, it can reduce the sperm count, it can reduce the sperm motility, and you can see that there is an increased exposure to the estrogens, either through the diet or the dairy products, and that leads to obesity. And that again reduces the testosterone levels and increase in the estrogens. And we are all exposed to a lot of bisphenols and phthalates, and this also increases estrogen levels. So that again causes obesity and increase in the incidence of infertility. When you come to the women, obesity reduces the pregnancy rates by almost 50%. And during pregnancy also there are higher complication rates. So definitely obesity has an influence in the men and in the women, and that reduces the chance of conception and increases the complications during pregnancy also. So I think one need to definitely maintain the lifestyle to make sure to have an early pregnancy and a healthy pregnancy.
Thank you, ma'am. I think now we move on to gastroenterology, because one of the reasons for obesity is overeating, and we say that the hunger, satiety, everything is controlled by brain, but finally the food is going to stomach also. So are there any factors that are there in the stomach which control the appetite? And second thing is, now there is a lot of talk about inflammatory foods which people are consuming, and also ultra processed packaged foods which affect the gut microbiome. And we know that that's one of your specialty areas also. So what is that gut microbiome? And then, what are the gut-related factors which are involved in overeating and obesity epidemic, what we can say? And, so some insights on that, ma'am.
Yeah, I think ultimately obesity comes to the gastroenterologist. Must be eating more, and that's why you're obese. And as a gastroenterologist, I agree with all the panelists and what they have said. And we always blame the spicy burger or the fantastic chips for the obesity. And before I proceed to say anything, yes, you need to control the diet and you need to exercise. But there is something else. So far, we always thought about us as me, okay? But the number of cells that I have in my gut microbes which have 10 times more cells than what I have, and 1,000 times more genes than what I have. So obesity is also controlled. So we are not me. I means me and my microbiome. That is my ecosystem. And with modern technology and being able to identify the entire gut microbiome, what are the bacteria there, what is the proportion, we know that that ecosystem is responsible for many of our ailments. Obesity is one of them as well. So there is diet patterns. Now we are checking the gut microbiome, suggesting diet based on that, and then trying to see if we can improve the entire ecosystem within the body. So these are newer concepts, and I think we can handle it. And I'll give you a small story which is very interesting. You know, there is stool transplantation. And stool transplantation for illnesses have shown very good results. Clostridium difficile infection, some of the inflammatory bowel diseases, stool transplantation. In America, a strange case happened. A lady was given stool transplant. Post-stool transplant, she became fine. She was normal, she was healthy, but she filed a case in court against the doctor. Why? Because she said, I was given gut microbiota from an obese person and I became obese subsequently. So, getting obesity, we always have patients who come and say that I don't eat much but I'm obese. So there is something else also, and I think we must focus on that as well.
I think now we move on to nutrition specialist, Dr. Esther, and she works closely with cancer patients. So I have two questions to her. We know that obesity is a risk factor for cancer also. That is one. And second thing is, we know that people who have cancer, they tend to lose weight. But is it possible that a patient with cancer can be obese also? And what are the nutrition strategies you advise, first of all, general public, so that they can reduce the risk of cancer and other illnesses? And cancer patient who is obese, how do you handle that?
Yes, thank you so much. So we all know that obesity and cancer, there's a very strong link. Obesity is known in different types of cancers, including the breast, the gynecological, the colon, and many GI cancers. In an Indian setting, if you ask me, it's very different now than what we would have seen a couple of decades ago, where cancer patients were coming to us emaciated. What we see now is the average BMI of cancer patients who come in an urban corporate hospital is about 30, especially for breast and gynecological cancers. And if you look at all types of cancers, then the BMI is 28, which itself is that at the time of diagnosis, patients are already overweight or obese. So do we put them on active weight loss strategies? Yes, we do, especially if they are, finishing the treatment, going into a survivor mode. That is one. The second is, if they are in for any kind of a transplant, like a liver transplant or a renal transplant, and the patient is really obese, then we put them on weight loss strategies during the time of cancer diagnosis itself. We encourage all the patients as to follow a healthier lifestyle, adoption of healthier lifestyle, which includes calorie definition of, how much they need to take, a high protein diet, a low fat diet, a low carb diet, and that causes weight loss as well. Now the chemo drugs that we have, so it's not like everybody who starts cancer treatment starts losing weight. So there are certain segments like GI cancers, head and neck cancers, yes, weight loss is more, but a whole lot of other cancers like prostate, gynecological, breast, where they don't lose weight even when they are on active cancer treatment. So yes, we do advise them to follow a healthier lifestyle, and weight loss might happen, or what we really look at is not making them gain more weight when they are on treatment. At this point, I also have to highlight on one very important aspect of sarcopenic obesity, which we see very clearly among cancer patients. Now, sarcopenic obesity is a condition where the individual is obese, but they have a depleted muscle mass. And that's a very concerning condition for us because we want to preserve the muscle mass when the patient is undergoing treatment, while we don't want them to have too much of fat mass. So the diets are more defined with exercise and other therapies so that we are able to build the muscle mass while targeting weight loss and fat loss. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sunita, for waiting for so long. But I think still you are a physician who deal with diabetes as well as lifestyle disease and sexual health also. So my question to you is, how does obesity or diabetes or other lifestyle disease affect a person's sexual health, both men and women? And how do you manage them, in terms of, say, obesity and diabetes affecting sexual health?
What I'm seeing nowadays is that there's more young men, more than women, more young men less than 30 years old approaching me for sexual health problems. Whereas maybe this was not the case when I was in UK. I would see more kind of middle-aged men approaching me for the problems, but here in India, especially even in Hyderabad and all over India, I'm receiving that. And when I go into their history, even they themselves are not aware. When I do the basic blood work, what I'm noticing is that they're either very much, they are quite obese. When I take their general health parameters, and they are either pre-diabetic or over-diabetic, but they were not aware that they were diabetic. So, and how does metabolic disorders cause sexual health problems? As Dr. Anuradha said, it's to do with obesity and low testosterone, increased estrogen levels. That causes erectile problems in males. In females, it leads to vaginal dryness, painful intercourse. When you look at diabetes per se, again, it's got to do with the interplay of the nerves and the blood circulation to the penile, to the pelvic organs. So in males, again, they end up with erectile dysfunction, ejaculatory problems as such, as well, retrograde ejaculation and ejaculation. In females, we see decreased vaginal lubrication. In both males and females, we see a lack of libido and also sexual arousal disorders. So basically the disorders are across the spectrum. We also see both males and females experiencing orgasmic disorders as well. So metabolic disorders do impact a lot on the sexual health. And it's a bit worrying, especially if you put this in the context of what Dr. Anuradha said about the infertility. And I think you are seeing more and more patients about that, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I think now we go on to the next major part, that is the diabetes. And this I would like to start with Mr. Shashi. So one thing is that, always I see people who say that, doctor, my HbA1c is only 6.3, I am all right, doctor told me nothing to be done. And then there are people who may be obese and they have something called insulin resistance, but most of them are not aware. So I would like to start from you. What is the concept of insulin resistance? Like, should the people wait to become diabetic and then take action, or is there something before that they can do so that they can prevent becoming a diabetic?
Yeah. So insulin resistance is a concept which is generally ignored, and it is not usually tested unless for certain specific condition. And insulin resistance is the precursor for diabetes. So we know that insulin manages our blood sugars. It's also a fat storing hormone. It's useful for uptake of amino acids. But when we become insulin resistant, then the cells stops responding to insulin. The body will increase the insulin secretion and leads to a condition called hyperinsulinemia. So it is this which we can measure. And if the insulin resistance is very high, then the chances of the person developing diabetes is very, very high. So if the HOMA-IR calculation, which can be done, like for example, HOMA-IR 1, if we do, and if the value is 1, 2 or more, that means the person is going into insulin resistance and is likely to develop diabetes in the future. So very often what I see is, as a metabolic health coach, I get many cases of pre-diabetes and I find insulin resistance very high. So what we do is we apply some nutrition strategies to lower down insulin resistance without any medication or anything. We apply low carbohydrate and higher protein diet, by which the insulin level also comes down and blood sugar value also comes down. So if we measure insulin resistance, if we measure HOMA-IR early, then we can apply certain nutrition strategies and prevent the full-blown diabetes or formation of diabetes itself. Now, there's one more side to it. Not every person with high insulin resistance may develop diabetes. It's sort of genetic thing. Some may develop hypertension. We also know ladies developing PCOS. Even cardiovascular disease is highly associated with insulin resistance. So if you can measure insulin resistance via measuring fasting insulin, fasting blood sugar, and calculating HOMA-IR, there's also other way, that is we calculate the triglyceride upon HDL ratio. If this is very high, that means the person is insulin resistant and is approaching towards diabetes or any other cardiovascular issue. So if we measure insulin resistance very, very early, then we can actually avert the formation of diabetes.
Yeah, thank you. I think maybe Dr. Esther, I know that you are not into that, but what are the kind of foods a person who's going to become diabetic, like his insulin resistance is high, or maybe a pre-diabetic, or even a diabetic. So what are the kind of foods they should take, and what are the kind of foods they should avoid? Some general
guidelines, okay, for the public. Okay. So it will be similar to what he had said. We focus on a diet that is high on proteins, low on carbs, moderate amount of fats. But what we also look at is the total calorie intake. So we go with simple calculations to make sure that the total calorie intake is not too much, and that gets balanced with adequate amount of physical activity. So once we know how much of calories an individual has to take, then we break that down into macronutrients. Our Indian diets typically give about 60-65%, even up to 70% of calories coming from carbohydrates. And that is what we try to cut down. We don't put them on ketogenic diets at this point. We put them on something that gives carbohydrates is still the primary source of energy, but we probably give it about 50% of calories, 50 to 55% of calories coming from carbs. We step up on proteins, but when we say we step up on proteins, it's not like we give them some 40% of calories coming from proteins. We step it up from, say, 5%, which what an Indian generally takes, to about 10 to 15% of calories coming from proteins, and the rest of the breakup is for fats. So if I have to break this down into foods that we eat, how we advise is make sure that you take more of complex carbohydrates, something that is high on fiber as well. Every meal contains some source of proteins. So if there is a non-vegetarian, then it becomes easier because eggs and chicken and fish, all of these are sources of proteins. They have more variety. But even if the person is taking a vegan or a vegetarian diet, then we give alternate sources of protein. But every meal comes in with a protein source. And fiber is emphasized because it is not just linked with glucose metabolism, but it's also associated with a lot of other metabolic parameters and the gut microbiome as well.
Thank you. Dr. Modi, next question to you. So basically, once people have already tried lifestyle factors, especially diet, so the question comes is, when should the person start medications? And patients always wonder, one is the tablets, that is oral hypoglycemic agents, and then when is the need to start insulin? So these are the two questions many people have, in a diabetic, when to start medications and especially when to start insulin.
Actually, lifestyle measures are the basics of a pyramid. If we consider diabetes management as a pyramid, base is by lifestyle measure. So nobody can escape from it. Timely food, timely sleep, and good quality food that all other speakers say, that good fiber intake, protein intake, good quality of fat and complex carbohydrate. So this is the basics of diabetes management. And everybody wants to avoid a medicine, but unfortunately 95% of diabetic patients they require medicine. 95%. So if you need medicine, then don't feel shame that I have become slave of the medicine. Whatever generally nowadays trend is to start with double drug rather than monotherapy and gradually increasing. People say that if you attack aggressively diabetes, then on a long run your sugar will remain under control for a very long period. But sequentially, if you increase medicine like monotherapy, then wait for 2 years, then second drug, then again after 2 3 years. So that gives troughs and peaks, and that gives a lot of blood sugar fluctuation. So that approach is not considered good. So most of the patient, yes, up to 7 to 8 years of diabetes, 70 to 80% of type 2 diabetic patients, they can be managed on drugs. But after 7 to 8 years, when their beta cell, they get exhausted, they require insulin. So indication of insulin is that optimum oral drug therapy, if your blood sugar is not controlled, then you will require supplementary insulin. Generally, we start with single dose basal insulin, and afterward we increase it, and subsequently basal bolus. Like means with each meal you give one bolus insulin, and night time you give basal insulin. So that is the course.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think now to Dr. Sunita, because many patients who have diabetes, they want to know whether they can ever come off the medications or not. Many times it is not possible. But is there something called diabetic, remission from diabetes? Can a diabetic, come out of medications forever or at least for long term? And is that possible, and how is it possible?
The answer is a resounding yes. At least I can speak from my own experience, my own patient database. After what Modi sir has said, that the patient goes on the medicines, and then at some point, basically what I've seen in my experience, patients approaching me, they're actually fed up of medicines. That's the thing. The first thing they come into the room, they say, can you do something about, can I come out of medicines? That is the first question. And yes, I'd like to give hope to all, whoever is listening today, it is possible. But it's like a 50-50 thing. It's the motivation has to be from the patient's end. The doctor can't do any magic here. I can advise, I can suggest, I'll help. What works for me, or what has helped me reduce the medications, not only in diabetes, but even for, say, blood pressure medicines or even the statins, the cholesterol medicines, is that I look at the patient as a whole. It's not just I'm prescribed diet alone or exercise alone. So that's the other speakers have spoken. What I look at every clinic review is to focus on diet, exercise, obviously. Also on sleep, much was talked about it from the morning, but most importantly, the stress. So that is the elephant in the room, I guess, because no person, whether rich, poor, male, female, old, young, I have seen each and every patient is stressed in these current times. So every review of mine focuses on the release of stress, either through counseling, through simple trips. And I think it's more like a holistic care. And what I've noticed over the last 8 to 9 years, ever since I started my clinic in Hyderabad, is that I've been able to actually bring down the medications of my patients. And some of them are on no medications as well. And yes, so that's what we call the remission of diabetes. So yes, it is possible. I do have my patients. They are in remission. So the next question was for how long it is possible. Now that depends upon the patient. So if the patient is able to manage his lifestyle changes, positive lifestyle changes, for months, years together, he's going to be in remission. At some point, he knows, and I think it's more to do with the awareness and the education of the patient. Once it enters the patient's mind that, yes, this is possible, I have seen that they have been able to control the diabetes or other metabolic disorders quite well. It is that first initial hurdle is for them to understand. And once that's done, I think half the battle is won. So So diabetes remission definitely is possible. And I think one last thing I would like to tell here is that is possible in majority of patients who have actually lost quite a lot of weight. If they're able to lose roughly around 10 to 15 kgs, it's quite possible. They can keep that under remission.
Yeah, thank you. I think now we are going to the last round of questions, and then we'll have short 5 or 10 minutes for the audience also. So keep your questions ready. And so I think now we come to Dr. Anuradha. So basically, couples who have infertility, is IVF the only treatment, or do all of them need IVF, or when do you advise IVF, and what is the success rate? People want to know, is it 100% guaranteed? Like we see some ads and they got penalized also, claiming 100% success.
So there are different reasons why a couple is not getting pregnant. So I think here the male comes first. We should really check whether there is any problem with the male. And we know that now the IVF indications have widened. So if a patient goes to a clinic, for a fertility clinic, so what happens now is the doctor, the physician itself keeps asking, how eager are you to conceive? How much time do you want to take for a pregnancy? Do you want to conceive early? You want to take time? Or are you in a hurry or not? So definitely, we should not really rush into major treatments. We should try with the simplest as much as possible. But considering the age of the woman, it is very, very important. We do know that from 30 there is a difference. And the best reproductive age is between 24 to 27. So after that, the fertility rates come down. And many of the women they approach for a pregnancy by the age of roughly 36. And by that time, we expect the fertility to be already naturally declining. So depending on the cause and what the patient wants, the treatment is done. But then we should insist to try with the simple treatments as much as possible. And again, depends on the cause. Suppose the men have azoospermia, there are no sperms at all, or there are very few sperms, then you cannot really wait for a natural conception or a simple treatment. Then you have to plan for IVF or ICSI. There is an advancement where you can just pick up a single sperm into a needle and inject directly into there. So with that, even with very few counts, or even if you don't find anything, you just retrieve from the testis and use it. But again, in women also, when there are tubal blocks, there are endometriosis, then you go for IVF. So IVF is not really required for everyone, but then the horizons and indications of IVF really have widened now. So many are going for IVF and it doesn't work out in the first few. But then we should know that IVF does not have a 100% success rate. The maximum chance in each cycle is no more beyond 40 or 45%. So we should not really get eluded with all the advertisements which say that, okay, come to us or whatever, surrogacy will have a 100% chance or a 75% success rate for you. That is not true. It started with a single digit success rate 46 years ago, and now we have just come up to almost 40 to 45%. So definitely the chances in each cycle are not 100%. So the couple should understand. But only positive point is, suppose you do not conceive in one cycle, it does not mean that's the end of the whole thing. If you try more attempts, by the end of 3 or 4 cycles, we expect almost 80% to conceive. So it has the best success rate, but still it has its own limitations.
I think next to Dr. Rupa, you follow quite a bit on the lifestyle. So there are 2 sub-parts. One is Indians, we are blindly copying the West, and there is Westernization of lifestyle in most of us. So what is the impact of Westernization on the lifestyle diseases? And second is, you also focus quite a bit on the rural areas. So we know that in cities, there is a pandemic of lifestyle diseases. How about rural area? Like, are they exempt from all these things, or are we also facing similar problems there?
I think this is a good question and a very relevant one in the modern scenario. Yes, there is Westernization, and I don't need to highlight why. I mean, Hyderabad also 20 years ago, and now it's so changed. We have the swanky malls, our airport is world class. And when you have, there's technology, we have women in high positions, right? And together with that, there is the other side. And that other side is we have, if I may use the term, the McDonald's, the KFCs, the burgers, and the other thing. Penetration is happening because suburban Hyderabad, the villages are all getting infiltrated. So I run a rural program, and I found it, what I thought and what I saw when I went there was so different. every little village, there are no diarrheas. They are not malnourished children, who are running about the streets. They have a school, they have the school uniform. But every village has a different spellings used. Chow mein center. And there is the burger with B-U-G-G-E-R, B-U-R-G-R, but that store is there. And all the famous US companies' chips packets in multiple small packets are there. And that's surprising because they get it just for 2 rupees and 5 rupees, what we don't get here. So the school children are also coming out and having that. The consequences are lifestyle disease is a big spectrum. We discussed obesity, we discussed infertility. There is hypertension. Then there is reflux disease. We are doing a study in the villages. You won't believe it, but 40 to 60% of the villagers are saying they have upputundi kappuru karpuru. They have bloatedness, they have acidity, and all the other lifestyle diseases. So there is obesity, there's diabetes, there's hypertension, there is acidity, there is constipation, there is joint pains. They're not coming to us with malaria or tuberculosis and all that. So the infectious diseases are coming down, and it's an epidemiologic shift. What is happening is we are seeing the lifestyle diseases grow. Together with this, I would like to highlight one important factor. All of us have highlighted it, have mentioned it in some form, but I just want to say mental stress. Our kids are going through a lot of mental stress because of the education styles, again, mimicry of the Western world. And every patient that comes with reflux disease, their insomnia, there's addiction to electronic gadgets. I was checking my mobile at least 10 times in this place to see whether my hospital has sent any message. And all that is also increasing diabetes, hypertension, and other lifestyle diseases. So it is a time for us to focus and get out of this race and get ourselves a better lifestyle.
Thank you. So Dr. Modi, one thing which is in news nowadays is there are a lot of magic pills for obesity. And few drugs have become blockbuster drugs. They came for diabetes, but now anybody who's overweight and obese they're using, like Ozempic, and company has made billions of dollars. Share price also going up. So, who are the people who require, those so-called blockbuster anti-obesity drugs? And maybe, 1 or 2 lines about the bariatric surgery. Who needs bariatric surgery?
Correct. Actually, as Madam said, that in gut microbiota is very, very important. Similarly, gut is also very important endocrine organ. Gut has so many hormones. The moment you start taking food and you reach at some level, immediately satiety hormone will start secreting from gut. They will go to brain, they will go to satiety center, and they will inhibit hunger center. So these are 4 or 5 important gut hormones are there. The main one is GLP-1. It is secreted from distal intestine. And when we are hungry, that time also our gut is active. Stomach will produce a hunger hormone. It will go to brain and it will start ringing the bell that food, food, food. And unfortunately, our hunger center remains open almost 80 to 90% of time, while satiety hormones are active only for 2 to 3 hours, that is mainly after food. So these satiety hormones, they are utilized by pharma company, and yes, they are mainly, they were available in injection form, initially daily, afterward weekly, and now they have succeeded in making it orally also. So once you take this tablet, GLP-1 analog tablet, oral semaglutide, then yes, it can reduce your weight by 5 to 10%. And you rightly said that scientifically people have proved it that they are very good medicine for diabetes also. So oral semaglutide once you give to obese person, diabetes will nicely come under control. Their blood sugar fluctuations will come down, and weight will come down by 5 to 10%. And there are other hormones also like GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. So if you combine all three, that is called triple G therapy, then results are as good as bariatric surgery, 20-25% weight reduction. But only problem is still cost. Cost starts per month 10,000 to much more than that. So many people, they find it difficult, but those who are morbidly obese, like BMI of 30, 35, 40 with uncontrolled sugar, hypertension, diabetes, if they afford it, we do suggest because they are scientifically proved. And in India also many of them are available. Oral semaglutide is available. Some injections are also recently DCGI approved. So yes, now they say that they are like blockbuster medicine for obesity and morbidly obese people. It works. It will reduce weight by 10 to 20% to that extent, just like bariatric surgery. So
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think now to Mr. Shashi, I know that your dlife.in along with Mr. Anup Singh, and you're doing a lot of good work in the low carbohydrate nutrition space. So just for the audience, what are the indications for which you advocate low carbohydrate nutrition? If you can just list those indications.
Yeah, so practically in all modern chronic diseases, low carbohydrate or its extended version, ketogenic diet works very well. So we use it for diabetes, for obesity, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and even hypertension for the matter. And of late, there are a lot of studies, publications coming out on the utility of ketogenic diet in the management of mental health conditions like bipolar, schizophrenia, and neurological condition, which includes everything. And most of them, you know this, Parkinson, dementia, ALS, and even in cancers now. Now, a lot of case study publications have come out on the application of ketogenic diet in cancers. So, in the spectrum of most of the modern chronic diseases, low carbohydrate or ketogenic diet can be applied very, very successfully. So, for diabetes, it just works like magic, getting blood sugar under control and also reducing medication or possibility of getting off medication. Now, I am off medication for the last almost 9 years. So I'm managing my blood sugars with HbA1c of only 5 for almost 9 years, or Mr. Anup Singh is there managing it for almost 14 years without medication with just low carbohydrate nutrition.
Yeah, thank you. I think we had a very good session here, and just small applause for them. But now the turn is yours. I'm sure you have a lot of questions and queries. So you can just stand up, tell your name, and then ask the question and also whom you are asking.
I just wanted to know about nowadays a lot of foods are being branded as superfoods. So whether it's some kind of seeds or a lot of these new seeds, millets, flax seeds, pumps. Everything is branded as superfood. So for someone who is not medically equipped with that knowledge, how do we distinguish between what is really a superfood and what is more of a commercial marketing gimmick?
Yeah,
Okay.
but is there a superfood, and then if there is, what is superfood? Okay.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, so no, there is
Thank
nothing
you.
called superfood. I wish there was. It isn't. So a lot of foods get marketed like that, like whole foods, superfoods, magic foods. But end of the day, it is to do with how much calories an individual is taking, how much calories the individual is burning to, and how much of strength workouts, how much of muscle mass an individual is having, that will actually define the person's weight and the body composition. So even if you're taking millets again are end of the day carbohydrates. Even if a person is taking seeds and nuts, end of the day it is proteins. So it gets broken down to what the major nutrient it contributes to, and then we calculate it to meet the calorie requirement. So anything that is too much is going to be not beneficial, and taking a tablespoon of seeds is good because it's a good source of fats, but if you take a tablespoon of seeds and eat everything else, it will not make any difference. So
I think at the same time, I'd like to highlight one thing, and that is the timing of the food. Sometimes you feel that I skipped lunch, okay, and I had only dinner, so I'm having just one meal. The binge eating that happens, I think that needs to be controlled. So you should not go to a stage when you are so hungry that you could eat anything. So you have to balance it, have the timing, and then I always feel, and I think Esther, you'll agree, that your dinner should be a little early and go to sleep at least 2 hours after dinner. Simple thing to do. And another Indian habit, when there's so much of reflux going on, we have this habit of having a lot of water with our meal. So we are distending and bloating the abdomen. So take small amount of water with the meal, wait half an hour, okay, so there's no traffic jam, and then drink the rest of your water requirement. In fact, water can be had throughout the day. You can have your times. If you're working, then you need to know that, okay, at this time I'll have that water. But this Indian, wherever you go, they first put the water, and then you have the meal, and then you drink that whole water. I think that just distends the stomach. So this is just a regular tip with your superfood.
Yeah, thank you so much. One question that I wanted to ask is, with the increase in modern medicine, we are coming up with a lot of particular supplements and isolated minerals, which did not exist in the past, but people were still living. Now with the advent of so many specific supplements, and we advise supplements for babies, for adults, and the geriatric population, what would you say is, if a person is taking too many supplements, or is there anything that, an adverse effect that they should avoid? What are your thoughts on supplements basically, apart from the medical use or misuse?
Dr. Modi, yes.
Actually, there is something called hidden hunger in India. Like even obese person also is nutritionally very much deprived. We don't have micronutrients, we don't have protein in our diet, we don't have good quality of fat. So we prescribe this meal replacement or nutritional supplement. One angle is this also, that at least if somebody is using genuine nutritional supplement, he will get some micronutrient, he will get fibers. Even in natural food, all these micronutrients content has come down so much that I will tell you one NIN survey, that iron content in tomato in 1989, whatever it was there, now it is only 20%. Only 20%. So even from natural food also we are not getting adequate micronutrients. We are not getting, our normal protein requirement is 1 gram per kg. And average protein intake in India is only 0.5 to 0.7 gram per kg. So everybody is protein deprived. So I am not propagand of all these nutritional supplement. But at least when I read that this contains this much iron, this much micronutrient, this much selenium, this much fiber, so I feel that at least he will get this much. So that is one more idea after prescribing this nutritional supplement.